It is very difficult to discuss with someone audio quality if you are not aware about psychoacoustics. And this is why I put a very short overview about it, and also we will talk about MPEG-3. How psychoacoustics works. First, you hear a sound. Then your ears pick up the sound. This is sensor level. Air transforms sound in electrical pulses, and this sound or those pulses are traveling to our brain. Brain's powerful DSP, digital sound processing unit. Our brain interprets sounds from our air, and according analyzed information, our brain signals your body to take appropriate actions. Either you hear something, or you should run, or you should be happy, or you should respond. So, our body takes an action. And regarding the hearing, I have a relatively good hearing, and I had it always, all my life. I have younger wife than me, but when we are watching TV, she always asks, could you add a little bit loudness? And typically it's about 3 decibels difference. So my ears are more sensitive than my wife. By aging, our hearing sensitivity drops, and at the age of 27, I was capable to hear sound frequencies up to 18.5 kilohertz. Today I'm capable to hear it only about 14 kilohertz, but it's still good for my age. But anyway, when we are aging, our sensitivity to higher frequencies is dropping. Let's make an experiment. Take your best headphones and test your hearing frequency range. I pointed here a link, and you can find it in description. So click to that link and go to tone generator. Take a good headphones and play around it a little bit. Yeah. It's easy to hear that. Low frequencies, our sensitivity is dropping. And when we go up, yeah, here, I can hear, lower. Here I added a little bit volume, and I barely can hear the 14 kilohertz, barely can hear. If you are younger, probably you will hear it, but I'm not. This is maximum limit what I am hearing, and also it's like a little bit pressure. I can hear the tiny things, and that's it. And then it's silence. But here, of course, we can hear a lot better. I should reduce volume even. We are very sensitive at that region. It's loud. It's louder, lower, louder, less. Okay, here my speakers are not able to reproduce anymore. No, if you add the volume. No, there is, yeah. It's still capable to produce something. Even here at 29, I have small speakers, but they are rather capable. So, this is nice experiment. It's clearly you can understand how important is maybe lower frequencies and mid frequencies, and less important for high frequencies. So talk that at 20 kilohertz there is a small drop is nonsense. Yeah? They are not able to hear, our resolution is low. But in a mid-range we are very sensitive. Talking about our brain capability or brain DSP, we can do a lot of stuff with the signal what we hear. We can apply different filters. We can focus our attention to one small point. Now, let's take an example. You are sitting in a nice summer day in a park. In front of you, you have a pond or lake with fountains. There are birds singing. There are child somewhere, and by focusing your attention, you can filter out fountain. You can filter out birds. Yeah, if you focus on a bird, you start to hear birds, but there is no fountain. You focus on the kids, what is screaming somewhere, you can easily hear them, and then you can focus on the highway, what is out of the park, and you can start to hear highway. So with the focusing, you can filter a lot of stuff out. It's even more. You are capable to fill gaps. You can hear things what doesn't exist between two gaps. For example, Ludwig van Beethoven was writing their last music when he was aging. He was deaf, he lost the hearing, he lost the sensor level, but he was able to write music, and he wrote some tremendous masterpieces just using their brain without sensors. So this is one thing, is psychoacoustics, that blind listening tests is only test what is capable to remove our capacity or capability to even synthesize some things what doesn't exist in the worst case. But we can do a lot of stuff with our digital sound processing. Also, it's brain consuming. You can take a tricky thing like when you don't hear anything, when you're thinking with high intensity, or you're focusing on something. When I was sound engineer, I was specializing in symphonic music recording and in sports. I was engineer. I was not mastering music, and often happens when I went home after work and they asked what you did. We had a symphonic music recording. What was that music? And I can't say, because all my focus was on microphone quality. Are there any hum? Are there any scratches? Are there any defects in that? I was focused on technical capability of that, but I was not focused to music, and even can't say what music it was afterwards. I know that there was a symphonic music orchestra, and that's it. Also, another experiment you can do, if you close eyes, approximately in 5 to 10 minutes, you start to hear a lot more details because you're releasing some computing power. Because our brain takes a lot of processing capacity for visual information processing. When you close eyes, you eliminate visual information, then you have a lot of additional processing power for audio. You start to hear better. Sometimes when we want to enjoy music, we are closing eyes and then we hear it somehow deeper. There can be extremely gifted people regarding this sound signal processing. It's a perfect pitch refers to a person's ability to identify any musical note by name after hearing it without reference to other notes. Perfect pitch, also known more technically as absolute pitch, can also refer to the ability that some singers have to sing a given note on cue. And there are several people, some of them very famous, like Ludwig van Beethoven, Frédéric Chopin, Celine Dion, Ella Fitzgerald, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Those are very gifted persons, and those are gifted especially with this DSP, or digital sound processing, or brain capacity to analyze. When we're talking about audio quality, whom you would trust? Rate credibility from 1 to 10. The sound engineer with a measurement equipment. I used to be, in my life, sound engineer. Audiophile with excellent audio setup. Teenagers with headphones, listening a lot of music. Professional musician. Only yourself. That would be an interesting example. Here I picked two engineers who devoted his life testing and studying different audio equipment. Amir is one, and he really doing a lot of stuff and explaining a lot of things on YouTube, and he is doing it somehow deeper than others. He's really skilled guy, and he has a lot of measurement equipment, high-end measurement equipment. We can only guess of the total price of it, but it's a hundred of thousands, I would say. The only thing what I would complain to this guy is that he's setting too harsh requirements for audio equipment. For example, audio amplifier, the figures what he mentioning, those are really insane high. And if we look to psychoacoustics and our capability to hear and speaker capability to reproduce, then amplifier, I know total harmonic distortions of 115 decibels are insane. It's fundamentally insane. But otherwise, I agree about many things what this high-end specialist is telling. He has perfect English. He explaining it in an understandable way, and it is kind of ahead of market, ahead of normal people knowledge. You can learn a lot from this guy. He has 39,000 subscribers and 88 videos talking a lot about measurement and psychoacoustics and measuring different devices. He has very strong forum as well. I really recommend this guy to listen, but listen critically, asking questions why. If he say he can hear some incredible low distortion, then ask how you can hear it. Another one is Audioholics. This guy is measuring a lot of equipment. It's more commercial. Between the commercial reviews, he has also conceptual reviews, and in excellent English, in excellent storytelling way, he is explaining things. Those two sources, what I really recommend for many to educate themselves to take the right choices, picking equipment or understand the topic. Okay, let's go back to psychoacoustic model, and there's I put together all important things what you should know. So first, human hearing and voice. So frequency range is about 20 Hz, 20 kilohertz, most sensitive at 1 to 5 kilohertz. It is defined as a standard, and you should know that at studio you are doing super hard filtering at 20 kilohertz. It's 60 dB filter. There is no harmonics in any recording. Either it's vinyl or it's digital or it's high resolution digital. There is a hard cut at 20 kilohertz. Industries think that there is no sound, but we are not capable to hear about 20 kilohertz. In reality, we are hearing less than 20 kilohertz. Those are gifted young persons who hear that. Dynamic range, quietest to loudest, theoretically possible, is 96 dB. What is 96 dB? It's 16 bits, it's CD quality. CD resolution is exactly what our hearing is capable of. Normal voice range is about 500 Hz to 2 kHz. Lower frequencies are vowels and bass, and high frequencies are consonants. Those s, s, tsk, tsk. How sensitive is human hearing? To answer this question, we look at following concept. Threshold of hearing describes nothing or quietness. And it's like a trigger. It's going lower sound, lower sound, lower sound, and then clucked is nothing, absolute nothing. Then we talk about frequency masking. A component at particular frequency masks components at neighboring frequencies. Very important, very important. Such masking may be partial. And temporal masking. When two-tone samples are played closer together in time, one can mask the other. Also very important thing, what is used in signal compression. Psychoacoustics are extremely important in music mixing. Those guys probably have in-depth courses about psychoacoustics, and they know even tiniest things about how humans hear. To do the good mixing, you're working a lot with the filters. It's not just to add some decibels to certain frequencies. Now you're working with the frequency bands, you have multi-channel recording, and then brilliant guys with a lot of skills making recording. Either it's sound, and if you are not a good master, music mastering person, then they don't sound. Yeah. They're technically okay, but somehow it doesn't sound. A lot of things should be taken in music mixing. This is a hearing threshold. That curve, it has, you can see that our hearing at 1 kilohertz, no, here at 1 kilohertz, it is set as a reference. So industry decided that this is a 0 for a hearing. Yeah? Nevertheless, on a most sensitive area, we can hear even additional minus, I don't know, 10 decibels. But this is set as a hearing threshold, and you can see that hearing threshold for 50 hertz is 100 times higher. So if you want to hear them equal, like 1 kilohertz and 50 hertz, we should have much higher power. About the speech. This is area what speech is taking. Typically, it's we are speaking somewhere about 60 decibels, comparing to hearing threshold, and the frequency range is limited. No, somewhere from 200 hertz to 5 kilohertz, not 4 kilohertz practically. How about music? And there is interesting fact that music practically exists from 35 hertz, somewhere here, up to 7 kilohertz. The rest are music instrument harmonics about that. But the pure tone is here. It's relatively limited bandwidth, what we are talking about the music. And the music dynamic range is somewhere from 20 dB to 90. Okay, so you can put that area a little bit higher. You can listen louder, but when you do the music mixing, then it's mixed somehow this way. Maybe a little bit more, no less. Typically, a little about that. And if you listen it's comfortable listening, and you hear all the details. And then you don't need a tone controls for your amplifier. So here is all music instruments, and you can see that typical the lowest music instruments are somewhere here at 36. That means if we buy expensive speakers who can go down to 36 hertz, for music it's absolutely perfect. And here the highest harmonics are about 16 kilohertz. I'm today hearing almost all music spectrum, almost all, but not all anymore. Here is the same picture, another one. You can see that they made it just up to 16 kilohertz, and we can see different music instruments, electronic music instruments like synthesizer. We can synthesize any frequency, so it can go from 16 hertz to 20 kilohertz, or even to 100 kilohertz if you want. We can synthesize any frequency. But when we talking about the classical music instruments, the different piano instruments, they are not playing very high. They're playing about those 7 kilohertz, and then we have harmonics. Here is interesting moment that if you want a nice punchy bass, there's two components. There are components here from 70 to 300 hertz, not at 20 hertz. Yeah. Now all this nice punchy bass is relatively high, but important that they have harmonics about 4 kilohertz. And if you have a drop on the high frequencies, your nice bass or nice punch will not sound punchy. It's important that there are two harmonics, the two components, what is making this nice, clean, punchy bass. and of course other number of instruments. One more important thing to discuss, especially when we are looking at the measurements of different amplifiers. For example, Class D amplifier has filter and output, and there are different designs, and some of people are saying that they are not good because they have a 20 kilohertz. After 20 kilohertz, 30 kilohertz, they have some drops in frequency characteristics and peaks. What is doing guys with the measurement equipment? They are testing 20 kilohertz frequency and putting meander. Meander means it's a pulse with the sharp edges, and they show that those pulses has peaks or they have some distortions. What is wrong with that? Wrong is that at studio level you never has those harmonics what they are measuring. There's a hard cut at 20 kilohertz. This is what see music signal. Yeah, and music signal at 20 kilohertz with filter out harmonics will be sine wave, clean sine wave at 20 kilohertz. At 500 hertz, of course, you will have rest of harmonics. But once signal is filtered at the studio level with 60 decibel filter, you see there's 28, 29, half a decibel, like peaking at 20 kilohertz, and there's linear at 8 ohm load. Green is 8 ohm load, it's practically linear, and open loop is down. And this is important because otherwise you can show measurements and all communities say, oh, Class D doesn't work, Class D is bad, they have a filter, they have some peaking or something like that. But it's a wrong perception, and you can see that professional equipment using Class D now with almost all designs are Class D in professional speaker building, active speaker building. Here is icepower 200 Ace2 based on Texas Instruments chipset, and what we can see that linearity is even better, but otherwise people are complaining a lot. But if you look at the 20 kilohertz, 20 kilohertz blue 4 ohms is almost linear, and 8 ohms has a little bit emphasize for decibel, maybe. And regarding our resolution, our hearing resolution, decibel at 20 kilohertz is nothing. There is no music first. I don't hear it. Maybe someone hear it, but this is neglectable things. So in reality, Class D amplifiers are perfectly linear. And the latest generation Class D amplifiers was filter in a loop. They have frequency independent pattern. It's like icepower 1200. This is the latest development of icepower company. They have almost perfect linearity, and there is a drop for 0.5%, no, 0.5 decibels at 20 kilohertz. It's absolute linearity. It's a perfect linearity from psychoacoustic perception. So this comment was made mainly for you when you are looking of someone who is measuring. The key thing is understand, is he measuring right things? If he is not measuring, we should compare apples with apples. Class AB with Class D, we should compare in audible bandwidth. With audible bandwidth. And audible bandwidth by default in industry is set from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. And there's a sharp, hard cut at 20 kilohertz at studio level. Threshold of hearing. Experiment. Put a person in a quiet room, raise level of 1 kilohertz tone until just barely audible, vary the frequencies and plot. There is most sensitive to frequencies between 1 and 5 kilohertz, where we can actually hear signal below 0 decibels. We already talked that 0 decibels are set for 20 micropascals, and this is industry agreed standard that this is at 0 decibels. Then when we are using industry terminology, everybody understands what does it mean. Two tones of equal power and different frequencies will not be equally loud. Sensitivity decreases at low and high frequencies. This is threshold of hearing, basic principles. Equal loudness contours. In 1993, Fletcher and Munson investigated variation in apparent loudness of sound with frequency and found that they need to plot a set of equal loudness contours because the air's frequency response varies with loudness level. So they took some volunteers and did this experiment. Robinson and Dadson repeated experiment in 1956. Because in 1933, loudspeakers were so bad that they were harmonics, and people heard the harmonics at lower frequencies. So they adjusted. The red ones are a new standard, and it is set as a ISO standard, ISO 226. And and this ISO standard has been taken in year 2003 as a base for further device development. And it's always worth ask why. Why evolution made such strange pattern? And if we draw the red line, how can we do the interpretation? We can do the interpretation of those curves as a filter. We filter out unnecessary frequencies to better hear those what are most important. If you look at evolution, human for a long time was somewhere in the middle of the food chain. They were stronger, larger, and faster predators who also was looking for a food. In that case, very, very important to hear those tiny bits like small cracks of dry leaves or other stuff. All those cracks are here in frequency range from 1 kilohertz to 4 kilohertz. We filter out all unimportant things and focus on that. It's a calm night and you can hear the tiny things. You should have very good hearing because your life depends on it. And then this filter is a best solution. A weighted filter. Actually, you can see a lot of measurements are done with a weighted filter. It's a blue. So we do like a reverse filtering because we are not capable to hear low frequencies and high frequencies. That our signal to noise also reduces. Electronically we can measure flat signal to noise response and say that noise is higher, but realistic figures are when we filter out noise based on a weighted filter pattern. So it's kind of reverse to those hearing lines. In this picture, you can see that it's standard weighted. It's this one, and then in inverse ISO 226, what is the most accurate one. But I haven't heard many measurements when they apply this curve. So typically it's A-weighted. It's a simple filter, A-weighted. So how loud you should mix actually depends on a studio size. For a large studio rooms it's 85 decibels, and for smaller mixing rooms it's about 70 decibels, what gives the same result. A good rule of thumb is that your volume level should be low enough to allow your conversation without raising your voice. If you need to shout to be heard, your monitors are too loud. What conclusion we can make out of it? If you are listening at the same level, we don't need tone control. And for good audiophile grade equipment, actually you don't need tone control. With tone control you can make things worse. In most cases, 99.5 cases, that recording will sound worse with a tone control. And here is how modern recordings differs from recordings from the past. Those are compressed. You can see that dynamic range has changed, and they try to mix them louder. If you're listening recordings from 50s, from 60s, from 70s, they have high dynamic range. You need a better equipment to read it. And modern mixing, they will sound good on earphones. You don't need that good equipment to listen latest recordings. They are professionally compressed and they sound good at relatively bad speakers. But if you are listening all the music from 50s to modern music, then a lot of music in the past demands speakers with high dynamic range. Frequency masking. Experiment. Play 1 kHz tone, masking tone, and at fixed level, 60 decibels. Play test tone at a different level, for example, 1.1 kHz, and rise level until just distinguishable. Vary frequencies of the test tone and plot the threshold when it becomes audible. And here is the result, what you get about it. So you can see that a second tone, depending on the distance from the main tone, should be played at certain volume to be heard. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. The masking tone of the main tone with a higher volume, it's completely masking another tone. Here is better picture describing the same topic, and what is important here is a masker. It's a dominant tone. It's about 300 hertz, and here is a 400 hertz tone, and you can't hear it. You can hear it until it's not going above masking threshold. Yeah. Here you can't hear it, and here you can. Of course, if they be the same, at the same level, you will hear it. But here, you will not hear it. Results are standardized, so you are masking below the masker frequency or masking above masker frequency, and those curves are well documented and set as a standard and then use it in compression algorithms. And if you repeat that previous experiment for Fourier's frequency of masking tones, you get a different curves. Those also are standardized. For different frequencies, you have different masking patterns. Temporal masking. If we hear a loud sound and then it stops, it takes a little while until we can hear a soft tone nearby in frequency. And there is experiment. Play 1 kHz masking tone at 60 decibels plus test tone at 1.1 kHz, 40 decibels. Test tone can be heard, it's masked. Then you stop masking tone, then stop test tone after a short delay. Adjust delay time to the shortest time and test tone can be heard. So principle is, when you stop masking tone, you can't hear immediately masked tone. There is needed some time until we are able to hear it. So, net effect of masking. We have 3 axes. Here is time, here is frequency, and level. And you see that the masked tone is doing 3-dimensional effect. Everything inside that pattern we are not able to hear. Inaudible tones under the curve. MPEG coding algorithm. First, use convolution filter to divide the audio signal, for example 48 kHz sound, into 32 frequency subbands, subband filtering. Then determine amount of masking for each band caused by nearby band using the psychoacoustic model. If the power in a band is below the masking threshold, don't encode it, encoding level. Otherwise, determine number of bits needed to represent the coefficient such that noise introduced by quantization is below the masking effect. It's critical. Recall that one fewer bit of quantization introduced about 6 dB of noise. And then, as a final stage, format a bit stream. And masking and quantization example, say performing the subband filtering step on the input results in the following values. For demonstration, we are only looking at the first 16 of the 32 bands. The 60 dB level at 8th band, this is our example, gives a masking of 12 decibels in 7th band, 15 decibels in 9th, according to the psychoacoustic model. So the level 7 band is 10 dB. and it is less than 12 dB, so we ignore it. So this band, this frequency sample, we can ignore. The level in the ninth band is 35 dB here. Here. It is larger than 15 dB. We encode it and send it. We only send the amounts above the masking level. Therefore, instead of using 6 bits to encode it, we can use 4 bits, saving 2 bits, what is 12 decibels. Determine number of bits needed to represent the coefficient such that the noise introduced by quantization is below the masking effect. Noise introduced is 12 dB, masking is 15 dB. So, we are great. Masking and encoding specifics, you have subbands, and then you have number of samples, and for layer 3 we have 3 samples. There's no reason to talk about MPEG-1 and MPEG-2. You can stop and read if you want, because we are interested in MPEG layer 3. So, MPEG-3 coding specifics. MPEG layer 3. It is MPEG-3 what we today using in majority of streaming services. They have better critical band filters use non-equal frequency bands. Psychoacoustic model includes temporal masking effects, takes into account stereo redundancy, and uses Hofmann coder. What is Hofmann coder? Hofmann coding and algorithms developed by David Hoffman while he was Doctor of Science in Academy Research at MIT and published in 1952. Actually, basic principle is that he elaborated encoding algorithms for Word document compression, and he used statistics that letters A and E are more frequent in any speech and any writing document, and assigned lower bit rates to them because they are more frequent, and those who are less frequent or rare, like a U and X, they assigned larger coding lengths, and then he can compress the document much better, comparing if all the letters would have the same length of the coding. Very simple, and it's lossless. Then stereo redundancy coding. When we provide stereo signal, we can also apply different algorithms. Intensity stereo coding at upper frequency subbands encodes summed signals instead of independent signals from left and right channels. Middle side stereo coding encode middle, sum of left and right, and sides difference of left and right channels. It's those all algorithms are reducing file sizes. And effectiveness of MPEG coding, like layer 1 with a target bitrate of 192 kilobits per second, compressed 4 times, layer 2 with 128 kilobits 6 times, still keeping good quality, and layer 3 can compare up to 64 kilobits per second, it's 12 times with acceptable audio quality. And for me, of course, is a question about MP3 quality compared to CD, but probably in most cases is a source. And we know that for music, high fidelity music reproduction, we use 320 kilobits per second streams. And now we came to the sacral question, MP3 quality. And the key question here is whom you would trust. Rate credibility from 1 to 10. Sound engineer with measurement equipment, audiophile with excellent audio setup, teenager with headphones, professional musician, only yourself. And here is my ratings. Sound engineers with measurement equipment. Since I was a sound engineer, I really appreciate guys with a mastering experience. They know how music should sound. I'm a sound engineer, so. Audiophiles, unless you are not also a musician, I kind of don't trust. Teenagers with headphones, professional musician, yes. And why? Professional musician in everyday life, he is listening real instruments, and he has in a memory clear understanding how those instruments should sound. And in recording, either it's compressed, non-compressed, or anyway, he will hear artifacts or difference between recording and real instruments. Only he has experience. And I also trust myself. If I like, then I like, yeah. But authority for me is professional musician. And here I found one. Look at the profile. Who is he? Read profile. Okay. Keith Stead, who did experiment. Who is he? He graduated from Royal College of Music. He's a professional musician. He played the trumpet in major venues, which includes Royal Albert Hall, St. Paul's Cathedral, Westminster Abbey, performing in front of Prince and Princess of Wales and the Queen Mother. Some respectable musician, if I can read between the lines. Playing piano. Piano is very critical instrument. Okay, he's my guy. So, what he did. There is no argument in the audio world about the quality of CDs versus MP3. CDs win outright. Yet, in spite of this, MP3 file format has gained popularity and is widely used in internet. In side-by-side listening tests, however, how do the two formats compare? This is something I wanted to find out myself. So, in order to make a fair comparison, all elements in the audio chain should remain constant. In other words, the sound should go through the same amplifier to be heard through the same speakers and headphones. Other important factor to avoid bias is for the listening volume to remain exactly the same as up to a point. Louder is often perceived as better. It's important. 1-2 decibels difference in loudness will make a preferences for a louder signal. To achieve all this, I loaded 2 CD tracks into a computer and using high-end mastering software, copied and converted them into MP3 files. Now with the CD and MP3 tracks residing side by side in a computer, I would be easy to flip from one to other to make a direct comparison. The screenshot below shows the waveform of the CD in blue. The PCM 16-bit CD file has been converted into WAV file, but for the purpose of this discussion, I will continue to refer it as a CD, and the MP3 file is red. So, you have two sources, and this guy with good ears and professional musician did a comparison. And the key is result, and I think the main result is 320 kilobits per second, because we can buy such service, such streaming service. And what the guy is saying, at the sample rate of 320 kilobits per second, much to my surprise, I was struggling to hear any difference between CD and MP3 tracks. I thought that CD sounded ever so slightly brighter and cleaner, although, having said that, if I heard just one of the files, MP3 or CD, I could not with any certainty say which I was listening to. Although I didn't think I would be, I was impressed with the quality of the 320 kilobits per second MP3. There's no reason to read other ones, and I came to the same conclusion when finally I chose my streaming service provider. It was Spotify. I was not able to distinguish between CD and MP3, but I was clearly able to distinguish between bad mastering in studio and good mastering in studio. It's day and night, but good studio mastering in MP3 format, for me, it is acceptable. There was another publication that MP3 at 320 kilobits per second, losing in most complex music about 2%. And if professional musician said that he is not able to distinguish, then I don't believe audiophiles who are able to distinguish. Professional musician is for me higher authority than audiophile. So, making long story short, I accepted the quality of MP3 320 kilobits per second, and I subscribed service for Spotify. And the key argument for my decision making was that I liked those built-in intelligence what this service has, offering for me similar music, making playlists, and many other. So content management I took over the lossless formats, and maybe some important things about audio quality. You should go to settings and set them as very high, and take those two, adjust audio quality based on a network off, and normalize volume also off. Then you will have best possible here. Those settings are super critical. And if you want to test the quality and your audio setup, you should choose good mixing in studio. It is very important. And there is such a guy, Dr. Chesky. So there is one disc what I recommend, Dr. Chesky Ultimate Headphone Demonstration Disc. And what you can test very good recordings. You can test recordings with high dynamic range. And then he put also samples with a modern mixing. When you do high compression algorithms, that music sounds better on a bad headphones. And you can test if you have a high resolution headphones or music system, you will hear difference between different compression levels. You remember we looked at modern music mixing patterns, and you see that this music is compressed with a low dynamic range. And finalizing some reasonable figures for baseline. What we normally listening: CD quality 16-bit 44.1 kHz sampling and 96 dB dynamic ranges. Non-similar quality we can get with MP3 320 kilobits. That's my pick for perfect sound quality today. Conscious decision, and I'm not deaf. So I'm ready to sacrifice 2% of quality for services. HD audio 24-bit 96 kilohertz, like a studio recording, but I would say not today, and mainly due to the content availability. If I'm not listening only world grants, but also my local country produced music in my local language, then content is more important than super duper quality. I'm not ready to pay for that. In my opinion, speakers are not ready, content is not ready, service is not ready, nothing is ready for this high bitstream audio, and we should wait. We should wait for next one, for a next quality jump. Amplifier total harmonic distortions between 0.005 and 0.03%. They are above human hearing limit. And modern amplifier weakest component is power supply, not total harmonic distortions. And we are not measuring modern amplifiers in the right way. We should measure them in a way, are they capable to transfer power to speaker? And it may happen that 150 watt rated amplifier is capable of 30 watt power due to the power supply. It's still built and rated as a high power amplifier, but in reality power supply defines what it is in reality. Not a total harmonic distortions, because we are above speakers, above human hearing, above everything. Class D is making market by storm. It is a big threat for high-end industry due to the price, due to the power, The Easy can make powers of 1 kilowatt is high quality. In Class AB industries, those are very expensive devices. So we can get super high-end device for reasonable money, and it is killing industry. It's worst thing what could happen.